The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the quiet suburban street. Eleanor Mitchell, a poised black woman in her late 50s, drove steadily, her hands resting gently on the steering wheel of her sleek black sedan. She had just finished an afternoon of errands and was looking forward to unwinding at home with a warm cup of tea. The day had been peaceful, uneventful, until flashing red and blue lights appeared in her rearview mirror. She sighed, a mix of frustration and resignation filling her chest. She wasn't speeding. She hadn't run any lights. Her vehicle was in perfect condition. Still, she signaled and pulled over to the side of the road, her movements precise and measured. She knew exactly what was about to happen because it wasn't the first time. A police cruiser stopped right behind her, followed by a second 1 moment later. Eleanor sat still, her hands on the wheel, waiting. In her experience, any sudden movement could be misinterpreted, and she wasn't about to give them an excuse. The driver's side door of the first cruiser opened, and a tall, stocky officer stepped out, adjusting his belt. His name tag read Officer Bradley. He approached her car cautiously, his face already set in a stern, authoritative expression. "License and registration," he said flatly, not bothering with any pleasantries. Eleanor turned her head slightly and met his eyes in the side mirror. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" Her voice was calm, composed. Bradley's eyes narrowed. "License and registration first," he repeated, his tone sharper this time. She gave a small nod and slowly reached over to the glove compartment, retrieving her registration while also pulling her driver's license from her purse. As she handed them over, she noted that a second officer, a younger man with an eager look, was already circling around the vehicle, peering through the windows. His name tag read Officer Kent. Bradley barely glanced at her documents before stepping back. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Eleanor didn't move. "On what grounds?" she asked, her tone steady but firm. Bradley exhaled sharply. "Ma'am, don't make this difficult." She raised an eyebrow. "Difficult? I'm asking a simple question. Why am I being pulled over, and why are you asking me to step out?" The second officer, Kent, now stood near the passenger side, nodding at Bradley. "She fits the description," he murmured. Eleanor's lips pressed together. She had heard this before. "What description exactly?" she asked, her voice unwavering. Bradley folded his arms. "A vehicle matching this description was reported in suspicious activity earlier today." Eleanor let out a quiet breath. "Suspicious activity?" Bradley shrugged. "That's what we're checking. Step out of the car." She knew that arguing wouldn't do her any favors, so she reached for the door handle and slowly stepped out. As soon as she did, Bradley gestured toward the hood of the car. "Hands where I can see them." Eleanor complied, placing her hands in plain sight, but her patience was wearing thin. She had been through situations like this before, and she knew exactly how these officers operated. "You sure seem nervous," Kent commented, smirking slightly. Eleanor tilted her head. "Nervous? No." "Annoyed?" "Yes." Bradley walked around her car, peeking inside. "Traveling alone, huh? Where are you coming from?" "Errands," she answered shortly. "You got a weapon in the car?" "No." "Mind if we take a look?" "Yes, I do mind," she said evenly. "Unless you have a warrant or probable cause, you cannot search my vehicle." Kent scoffed. "Ma'am, we're just doing our job." Eleanor gave him a look. "Your job is to uphold the law, not violate people's rights." Bradley's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to pushback, especially not from someone who remained so composed. Most people either panicked or argued aggressively, giving him a reason to escalate the situation. But this woman, she was calm, calculated, and something about that irritated him. "Turn around," Bradley ordered. Eleanor remained still. "Excuse me." I said turn around. "Hand behind your back." "For what reason?" Bradley pulled out his handcuffs. "For resisting a lawful order." Eleanor inhaled slowly. She knew where this was going. She had dealt with power-hungry officers like this before, men who didn't like being questioned, who saw any form of confidence as a challenge to their authority. She could keep arguing, but she had a better plan. With a small, knowing smile, She exhaled and said, "Fine. But first, let me make a quick phone call." Bradley chuckled. "A phone call? You think that's going to help you?" Eleanor didn't answer. Instead, she slowly reached in her pocket, pulling out her phone and dialing a number. She placed the call on speaker. The officers exchanged glances, unimpressed. A few rings passed before a deep, authoritative voice answered. "Hey, Mom, what's going on?" And in that instant, everything changed. Bradley smirked as Eleanor held up her phone, clearly thinking this was just another desperate attempt to get out of a situation she couldn't control. Kent crossed his arms, shaking his head in amusement. But then the deep, commanding voice from the phone speaker filled the air again. "Mom," the voice repeated, this time sharper, more alert. Eleanor finally spoke, her tone calm, but with an unmistakable edge. "I'm being harassed by 2 police officers who pulled me over without reason. They are attempting to detain me despite my full cooperation. One of them is demanding I turn around so he can put me in handcuffs." Silence. Then the voice on the other end turned cold. "What are their names?" Eleanor glanced at the officers. "Would you like to introduce yourselves?" she asked, her voice polite but firm. Bradley suddenly felt a tightness in his chest. He had been in law enforcement long enough to recognize when a situation was turning against him. This was one of those moments. Kent, still oblivious to what was happening, scoffed. "Who exactly are you calling?" "Your lawyer." He chuckled. "Ma'am, I hate to break it to you, but I'm a U.S. Attorney General." The words cut through the air like a blade. Kent's smirk disappeared. His entire body stiffened. Bradley, who had been standing with his arms crossed, uncrossed them immediately. He could feel his pulse pounding in his ears. "Let me make this very clear," the voice continued. "You are unlawfully detaining my mother, and I am now personally involved. You have exactly 1 minute to explain why she was stopped before I have both of you suspended, effective immediately." Bradley swallowed hard. Eleanor arched an eyebrow at him. "Well, you heard the man.